Hello and welcome. Last year I made a video going over the difficulties of switching over from Windows to Linux on my laptop. I did this since I wanted to do a dry run for when Windows 10 reached its end of life in 2025 and see if I'm capable of moving my other devices over to Linux because I refuse to install Windows 11 on them. And while I found Linux to be good for most of my personal use, I felt it still needed a lot of work before I could switch over to it for my professional work. My original plan was to wait out the Windows 10 end of life and maybe even wait until Steam abandons the platform. However, that plan changed when Windows 10 decided to turn my work machine, Darcy, into an absolutely unusable mess. From games and applications just randomly crashing to rendering my professional software completely unusable. I tried to troubleshoot my hardware by reseating my RAM, my graphics card. I even tried to reinstall Windows to fix the issues, but everything that I tried had no effect. Which got me thinking back to my laptop. The exact same software that I was running and having issues with on Windows was running perfectly on Linux. So why couldn't I grab my spare SSD and install Linux onto Darcy, at least before I rip my hair out and contemplate financing a Macintosh? But before I do start, this video is brought to you by us and the 16-bit store. From our new controller spools and our repairable e-reader cases to our classic products like DS styluses and display stands, we offer a unique variety of items which I've personally designed that are 3D printed and handmade that I find both reliable and long-lasting. If you're looking for a gift or would like to support this channel, please visit 16bitstore.com today and see what we have to offer. Finding the right Linux distribution for Darcy wasn't as easy as it was for my laptop. For personal use, my laptop could just have its operating system completely die like it did with Manjaro twice, and I would actually be fine since I usually do all of my sensitive work on Darcy anyways. Or if I did happen to do it on my laptop, it usually gets stored on a USB stick. But since I'm now switching out Darcy with Linux, I need to have an OS be as stable as it can. I can't just have the OS crash on me, and if it does ever decide to completely go kaput, I need to be able to recover quickly. So I sat down and made a long list of requirements of what I wanted and needed in a workstation Linux distribution. And while there are a lot of Linux distros out there, only a handful of them actually met my new requirements. And after testing them out and learning which ones were easy to set up or would end up being a complete headache to even get started, I eventually ended up settling on Linux Mint. I really would have liked to continue using Manjaro's flavor of Arch, especially with how user-friendly it can be. But due to its proven track record of instability and tendency to break itself through updates, I was not risking that on Darcy. Heck, I'm not even using it on my laptop anymore. I also would have really liked to move to a proper enterprise-grade distribution, like with Rocky Linux, per Davinci's recommendation, or Fedora per the community's recommendation. But due to the difficulties I encountered while installing NVIDIA's drivers, plus Rails' tendency to be a little sluggish when it comes to installing packages, using Fedora or a Rails-based OS was going to be a lot more work than I was willing to put into it to get these OSs to work for me. So what eventually won me over with Linux Mint? Well, Mint has a very simple and easy to install OS with an easy get up started guide, which includes an easy way to install graphics drivers and a support for a wide array of software and packages, both open source and commercials. Puja Slicer, LibreOffice, and so many more packages that I need to use to run my business were so easy to find via the software manager, thanks to the overall abundance of support for Mint's base operating system, Ubuntu. And if the Ubuntu packages were just a little too out of date from the software manager, it was as simple as a Google search where I can easily find official repos, portable apps, which I can kind of install with Gear Lever. And the best part about this entire process was just how much of the software that I use day in and day out works exactly like they used to on Windows in Linux. But this was the exact same experience I had when I moved over from Windows to Linux on my laptop. And honestly, the same thing can be said with gaming. Though, despite moving to a Ubuntu-based operating system with a combo shot of Flatpaks and installing third-party debs, Steam and Lutris still use the latest packages that are available on Fedora or on Arch. So all of my games and third-party launchers worked just as I had expected to, like good old Gaming Galaxy, EA app, and heck, I was even able to play online. Though I did come into a new hitch. Ubisoft Connect, while it works fine on my laptop, seems to have a slight disagreement with my NVIDIA drivers. Thankfully, Ubisoft Connect was the only bit of NVIDIA weirdness that I ran across. But none of this was surprising to me, as everything I have been looking at, all the software that I've been running, has been thoroughly tested before when I moved over on my laptop. What hasn't been thoroughly tested was my professional software. And it was with my professional software that encouraged me to at least try this out, since it was completely unusable in Windows. And thankfully, the open source software worked flawlessly in Linux. All the issues that I had experienced were now gone, even if I had to install the Flatpak version of some apps instead, while other versions I could go and get their third-party repos and add it to my package manager. Then we go into what could be the biggest headache of them all: getting Davinci Resolve to work. From my research, I saw that Resolve had a lot of issues getting it to work in Linux. And actually, it installed and worked without issues on my first try. Like everything I've tested up to this point, using Resolve in Linux was no different than it was in Windows. Genuinely, other than trying to re-import all my projects and relinking all the correct locations, I had zero issues editing and rendering with Resolve in Linux. My problems with Davinci Resolve came in the form of missing operating system features, which led to a lot of videos having to be re-edited in order for them to work, as well as limiting hardware features in a computer that I thought was well spec'd. Unlike Windows and macOS, Linux does not support AAC audio out of the box. While AAC audio can work, and Kdenlive does work with videos that have AAC in it, Davinci Resolve just doesn't try. This means that all of my new and existing video audios does not work. This required me to go and make a little bash script to use FFmpeg to copy over the video codec over and reconvert the AAC audio into PCM audio. This is a frustrating workaround, and Blackmagic, please give me the option to buy. I will pay you to give me the option to enable AAC audio. But at the end of the day, this isn't the end of the world, and something that is a drag and drop / double click solution to get around. I was able to add it into my workflow. No, the bigger issue actually was the fact that my high-end computer wasn't as high-end as I thought it was, since Davinci Resolve on Linux actually is able to utilize my computer's hardware a lot more than it did in Windows. So much so that the 16 gigabytes of RAM that used to work well no longer is enough. Even having a web browser open while rendering a video would crash it during very intensive scenes. But if I was to close everything down and just have Resolve running, it would render well. But it is just a little bit easier for me to go and slot in 32 gigs of RAM and just not have to worry about it like I did. And honestly speaking, outside of those two minor problems, I've had no issues running Davinci Resolve here in Linux. And to prove that point, the last 3 videos uploaded from the channel from the date that this video goes live was edited and rendered on Darcy in Linux. So at the end of the day, while it's not completely perfect, everything that I needed to use on Darcy and for my work does work in Linux. I'm going to be honest, using Linux has been such a nice experience, especially compared to the mountain of workarounds that I would have needed to do if I kept using Windows. And as a result, I have switched over to using Linux full time since I finished seeing if it was viable at all. Now obviously I kept the Windows SSD installed in my rig, just in case I still need to use some obscure Windows feature or software. While Linux Mint does work for my very specific and focused use case, and it did fix all of my specific issues that I had with Windows, I will still say that Linux isn't perfectly ready to be that one-size-fits-all solution like Windows is. For any users out there who are looking for a Windows alternative for their work computer, a well-spec'd Mac Mini might be a better first choice than trying to wrangle with Linux. However, if you were even contemplating moving over to Linux, I feel it's worth getting a spare SSD and giving the OS a shot. You may be surprised with just how much of your workflow may actually work and be a little more stable over here. But anyways, thank you so much for listening to my ramble. I hope you have yourself a good day, and as always, take care.